in some ways, Mars sort of taking the wind out of your sails in any way with that announcement? Thanks.
Well, I guess if you talk about this issue of Guoguang 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I would say the majority of the people here would say, let's go ahead with this venture. But today, people have different thoughts about big petrochemical companies. Essentially, we have bad experience when in the past, when we're talking about establishing a industrial site with large industrial production capabilities, people were very excited because they thought that they would be getting jobs and they would be able to prosper in the place where the manufacturing site is located. But look at the Liuqing. The local people didn't get much benefit out of that. And essentially we have seen so much imported labor in that operation, and you got so much pollution there too. So for local people, they're not getting any benefit from having a major industrial plants in the neighborhood. So this is the reason, one of the reasons why the Zhanghua people don't like the idea of Guoguang. And because the local people don't like that idea, and there are voters here as well. So the politicians will have to listen to what they have to say. But at this time, the society seems to be more sympathetic and more listen to what they have to say. And so responding to your question just now, I would say this is a positive development here. People nowadays are more environment conscious, and they want to have better and cleaner environment here. So the politicians have to respond to this change of mind by the people in terms of this environmental cause. But the thing is, there's always a challenge to politicians here. That is, if you don't want this, because for environmental purposes, then what would be the jobs that you will be creating for your people if you don't have this? So what I have said, and I spent a lot of time explaining it, is trying to find a way to create jobs that are environmentally more friendly and make more sense in humanity's terms.
Okay, let's see. Ben, you had your hand up first. I'll go with Ben. Well, we got a lot of hands here. I'm going to be, so try to make your questions straight and specific.
Thank you, Jerome. Chairman Tsai, if you win the nomination and the presidency, how will your administration deal with Beijing's predictable and inevitable accusations that the mere existence of a DPP government is provoking China and raising tensions? And do you have a strategy in place to help the US State Department understand that Beijing's anger is nothing to do with events on the ground in Taiwan, but a policy designed to undermine the Taiwan-US relationship?
That was a good question.
Well, this is a pretty serious question. Well, let me say this. We have a sad history. I mean, DPP has a sad history in dealing with China affairs. In the 8 years we were in government last time, we're trying to tell the world that we're different now. Our expectations are actually different than before. And we want to be on our own, and we want to be our own people. And and we want to be Taiwanese, rather than pretending that we are, and because there are cameras shooting at me, so. So the thing is that, but that is a very difficult time for us because we just, that was the first time we're in the government. And trying to tell the world and the people here we're different now and we have different expectations. So the mindset of the people outside of Taiwan did not change as we change. And therefore there's a gap of some sort. And that creates difficulties in the communication. And then whenever we say things, we tend to be marked as provocative. It's sad, isn't it?
Sometimes I think that's the U.S.'s fault.
You're an American citizen?
It's fault of the U.S.
Yeah, you're an American citizen?
Yeah.
Okay, then you have all the reason and all the legitimacy to say that. And therefore, but for that sort of transition, there's always a price to pay, and we pay dearly for that. But nowadays, after 8 years in the government, people now in Taiwan think that we are more of Taiwanese, and we're actually Taiwanese. And people outside started to know that Taiwan is actually different than before. And even people in Washington, D.C. So, but they, of course, would say, you need to improve your communication with Washington, D.C. And you have to build this trust with people there in Washington, D.C. So what we are short of is a group of good people who can communicate with people in Washington, D.C. efficiently. But unfortunately, we are a party in the last generation. No, the more senior members of our parties are all more like, I have to be careful about this. They are more like revolutionaries, and they are not people that are very good at diplomacy. They are not the kind of people who are good at having a drink with foreigner, or not the kind of people who would play golf from time to time. So there's a lot of cultural differences between DPP and people in the Washington, D.C. So it was difficult. I must say it was very, very difficult to have effective communication between Taiwan and people in Washington, D.C. And we paid very high prices for that. But now it's actually better because people now know that there is a difference. And to some extent, thanks to my angel, the way he dealt with things, the question matters in more of 20th century, and people thought not just 20th century, it's mid 20th century, 1950s and 60s,
Okay, good. Boy, I got a lot of questions here. Okay, I'm going to go Stefan. Okay, I'm going to go Curtis, and then Michael, and then I'll keep going. So
Thank you, Jerome. Hello, Dr. Tsai. I'm Stefan Corpus, a political scientist from France and currently living in Taiwan for my research. And having signed a recent letter to my INTIO, I have to confess that I'm an ignorant foreigner, and so I have to ask you questions to help me understand. My question is linked to the question that has just been asked. It's about Taiwan's strategic situation. I'm wondering whether during your mandate of chairwomanship or chairpersonship of the DPP, you have noticed a change of attitude from Washington administration, think tank, or media organizations toward the DPP, while the DPP was in opposition. I'm saying this because during the whole presidency of Chen Shui-bian, Washington kind of distanced itself from many stances of the DPP government, and partially because of the reasons you mentioned, a question of perception. And we had the sense that after Ma Ying-jeou was elected and became president, after a few months, some people in Washington started to realize that the Ma Ying-jeou we thought of was not the real Ma Ying-jeou, and the DPP we had perceived was perhaps changing. And I was wondering whether in the last months, especially from the DPP headquarters, you saw an increased flow of contacts from any important person in Washington indicating that their attitude on those two things, or persons, Ma Ying-jeou and the DPP, is changing. Thank you.
Well, in the last 3 years, we have been trying to rebuild this trust with people in Washington, D.C., including people in the government and also people in the think tanks. And we have made improvements in that regard. And of course, we still have to do more to make sure that they understand what our intention is. But I guess what is most important for us to say to them is that we, of course, have our own agenda in terms of dealing with the relationship with China, and we have our own expectations, but we understand we do have an obligation to maintain a stable and peaceful relationship with China. And I guess what people in the international community, including people in Washington, D.C., are concerned that whether we are too much, we emphasize too much as to what we want to do, what we want to achieve, and we forget that we do have an obligation towards the international community, that is to maintain a stable and peaceful relationship with China. So we want to assure people that we do understand fully that we do have an obligation in that regard. And then secondly, people in Washington, D.C. are concerned whether we are so conservative that we don't want to trade with China at all. So we want to make sure to people in Washington, D.C. and the rest of the world that we do want to trade with China as a normal trading partner. And we would follow the multilateral rules when we trade with them. And we also hope that this trade relationship is not too much affected by political forces, because when you trade with China, you always have a concern that this trade will be distorted by political intentions. So these are the kind of messages we're trying to tell the rest of the world, that we are a responsible party, and we don't do something that is not that's against the world trade. We would trade and we would have economic exchanges as part of the globalization process. It's just that we don't want to pay too much political price for we are entitled to as a member of the multilateral trading system.
Okay, Curtis. Okay, then Michael, then David. Are you still on? And Klaus. Okay. Come forward, David or Curtis. Identify yourself.
My name is Curtis Smith. I work at Taiwan. As an editor. Taiwan, I first want to wish you good luck. Generations of Taiwanese grew up working for democracy and they suffered. And then Chen Shui-bian and his clique betrayed the movement and betrayed the country, betrayed the soil, and the Taiwan people suffered. Okay, and I want to say, like when I look at these photos here, everyone, I think Chen Shui-bian. Okay, so, but I wanted many Taiwanese, when they go to the polls, will say, is a vote for Tsai Ing-wen a vote to let Chen Shui-bian and his clique out of jail? So I want to ask you, will you promise us now that as president, you are not going to pardon or interfere with justice to let Bian and his clique out? Thank you.
Okay, I will say first, Curtis, that is a judgment to say that he betrayed and was not set up, but or he was found guilty when other people were found innocent. But still, I will pass to Dr. Tsai and